And it was an amazing story, cuz I'm telling you, it is an amazing story. It's a story about the tribe. I want to say it's the Sioux tribe out of North America, and it's a tale about what they say a time before horses. So a lot of people don't sometimes forget, but there was a time when North America had no horses. The horses weren't introduced to this continent, I think, until the conquistadors landed in Mexico, and then they migrated north. But there was a time where the Native Americans referred to as the time before horses. And the story that I came across, cuz, is this, man. It was actually out of South Dakota, right? And it was near what they it's in and it was supposedly took place in this area called Central Trip County. I've never been to South Dakota. Have you ever been there?
I've been through there.
Really? Was it nice?
Yeah, it's a one of the last beautiful natural places we have left in this country.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that where
North.
is that where they shoot Yellowstone, that TV series?
I'm not real sure about that.
Yeah.
It may be.
Anyways, yeah. So Central Trip County up there. Supposedly on one of the highways over there, you'll notice a range, right? Like a ridge line, I guess is the proper word for it. That seems like out of place. So the Native Americans have a story on how that ridge line was basically created. The story is one of the best told stories I've ever heard. Like the guy that was telling this story, like he just had a talent for like telling stories, right? And it's like it had me like for it's a 10-minute story, and it had me the whole time, right? It was into it. But this story takes place, they tells about, happened during the time of what they call the time called the Summer of Storms, right? And the time before horses. I guess that's how they tracked, they tracked their timeline or whatever. And everything's word of mouth, right? So nothing was written down.
Right.
It's passed down from generation to generation. And to be fair, I've done an experiment one time where you whisper something into somebody's ear and they whisper the exact same thing into like 30 other people's ears. It goes around the table, and by the time it gets back to you, it's something completely different. So I'm sure there's been some embellishing along the way, but the story is amazing, right? It's fascinating. But I think the Native Americans probably have a pretty strong history of, getting it right every time. That's their primary way of, communicating. But this story talks about, I got his name. I wrote it down here. It's a time where this warrior named Cloud and 7 other braves killed this giant named Ea, right? They actually passed down the name of this giant, right? This giant's name is Ea. And so how the story unfolds, I'm going to give you the basic version of it, but if you're watching this video when you guys are done, after you hit subscribe and like, click on the link below and go watch that video. It is awesome. So well done. So basically what it talks about, it starts is that they were in the summer of storms. It was in the middle of summertime. They were in their dwellings. I don't think they referred to them as teepees or anything. They were in their dwellings. Big storm rolls up. All of a sudden, during the thunder and the lightning and all this crackling that's going on, something starts ripping through the camp, right? Something that starts coming through because they were mobile, right? They always moved around, right? And so something ripped through the camp, and this warrior, this young warrior, his name was Cloud. I didn't write down his woman's name, his wife, his mate, and he were in their dwelling. And it says in the storytelling that all of a sudden, just imagine pitch black, right? Pitch black, hard rain, thunder, lightning. A hand rips into the dwelling, right? Rips the top off of it, reaches down in there, grabs the woman, throws it into his mouth, and eats it. The hand was supposedly the size of a full-grown man. Reached in and grabbed it, right? Swallowed the girl whole, right? And basically was just going through the whole camp, snatching up women. Basically, it was grabbing women, throwing the women into its mouth, and eating it. This giant was. Then the giant just blows out of the camp, right? Morning time comes, the camp is destroyed, people are together, they're talking. This is the first time this tribe has ever seen Ea, but they had stories that they had passed down. And it says that Cloud thought that it was just a tale, right? That it wasn't real. So the elders of the village were saying, hey, look, everybody, sorry, there's nothing we can do. We have to leave. We can't kill Ea, he's too big. So they just start packing up. But Cloud was like, no, I'm not having that. Got my lady in there. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm not having this. I'm going. So he says, I'm going to go kill Ea and get these girls back, right? And the tribe was like, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. But it's basically a fool's errand. So he asked any of the other braves if they want to go with him. And I think one of them was called like Yellow Horse or something, and doesn't really mention the other ones. But it turns out like 6 or 7 more go with him, and they go after this thing, right? And it tells in the story, it goes on that this wasn't hard for them to find, right? Like this thing left a trail, right? Like it was so easy to find. He was so heavy that his footprints on the ground filled up with water, right? So they could easily track it. So they track it for about a day, and they find it. It's just laying there on the grass, butt naked. It literally says it stunk, unwashed, naked, and it goes out of his way to say this thing was ugly. Ugly. You know what I'm saying, right? Naked, unwashed, ugly, boom, on the ground, right? So the braves, they all sit around and they talk to each other, and they're like, hey, look, all right, we found it. We found him. We found Ea. What do we do? Right? This thing is massive, right? They can't kill it. So they come up with a plan. It's actually a really good plan, right? They come up with a plan. The plan is Cloud says, look, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to track it. You guys go down to this creek bed, this dried creek bed. It's full of sand. You guys dig a pit. And when you light a fire, I'll see the signal. I'll provoke the giant. It'll chase me. I'll run it into the pit, right? And this is actually how they used to kill grizzly bears back in the day. The Native Americans would build a big hole, get the grizzly bear to come. It would charge across and to fall through one of the spikes or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's what they were doing. So I think it was Cloud and Crazy Horse or Yellow Horse. I can't remember his name or whatever. They went to track the giant Ea, and their boys stayed behind, and they were digging in this dried creek bed, right? And so it took me a second, man. Like by this time, man, the story, like, it had me, dude. Like I was there. Like I was like, damn, man, like that's crazy, right? And so it got me thinking, man, like time is important, right? Like we don't have a month to do this. Like this has to get done now, right? So the other braves were sitting there, man. They were digging. They dug till their hands bled, right? They dug this massive, massive trench because this giant was huge. And it says it was 5 times the giant's height, right? So I can't even imagine how deep that was. And they created these slides on the side where the earth was. And they laid the stuff across, covered it with dirt or whatever. Light the signal fire. It took them 3 days to dig this, right? Round the clock, they dug 3 days, right? It took them 3 days.
Right.
3 days to dig. Light it. Cloud sees the smoke, but the whole time, man, like this giant's been walking like for 3 days, right? So Cloud was like, all right, time to do my part, basically. Goes up, provokes this thing, and they said its weakness was it was always hungry, bro. It was a slave to its stomach, right? So it saw Cloud, dinner. That's all it thought, right? It was like basically a feral wild animal at the time, man. And boom, he started chasing him. So Cloud had to run, dude. In the story, it doesn't say, how far he had to run, but he was running. And you got to think that this giant was chasing him. And it must have been one stride, had to have been 10 or 15 strides for the young warrior. You know what I mean? So like he's at a sprint. Yeah. The giant's coming, slapping at him or whatever. They're provoking it. The other warriors with him, running him or whatever, trying to get there. They get the giant to chase it, and they're heading back towards the river. He sees the river, but like By this time, man, Cloud is exhausted, right? Like he is exhausted. He is spent, right? He falls down. I think the giant somehow clips him, like gets a clip on him somehow, like a finger slaps him or whatever, man. And Cloud goes a rolling, and he's like, man, I'm done. I can't do it. Like the other guys hopefully can get it done. I can't get it done. But like, soon as he just basically laying there for the final squash to come. But it says that he got this little bit of spark in him, man. This little last bit of, let's get it in him. Rolled away from the slap, kept going, sees the goal, sees the finish line, right? Giants on him. Cloud runs across, no problem, because it's basically a false floor. Ia hits it, full stride, moving forward, boom, crashes, goes down, bam, falls to the bottom, right? So Cloud hauls ass. Soon as he's done, man, the other Braves start knocking away the dirt, man. The dirt starts just like pulling in, right? Pouring in. The Giants raising hell, trying to get out, screaming or whatnot. And eventually it turns into a whimper. He suffocates, he's thrashing about, can't get out, suffocates, he dies, right? They give it, a decent amount of time, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or whatever, to make sure this thing is dead or whatnot. Start digging like crazy, get down there to him. They gut this thing, right? Gut him. According to the legend, man. And this was a detail, man, that I thought was pretty wild. Cloud grabs his woman, his wife, pulls her out of the giant, and she's clinging to life, man, barely alive, right? But she's covered in this green stuff, right? And that just happens to be the same color as like stomach bile that I read, right? It's green, right? Covered in green, pulls her out, and like and the rest of the Braves come down there, like they see that, she's alive. They start cutting into this giant or whatever, cutting into his guts, find all the women that were taken, and there was a nearby like little river or whatever. Drag them over there, man, pull them into the river, wash them off or whatnot, and then they cling to life, man, and they all come back, and then they eventually go and they reconnect with their tribe, right? Crazy story. But then like the tribe gets together and like he takes them back. He's like, hey, look, I killed Ia. Obviously he killed him because the girls are back, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, yo, this thing.
C-section.
Yeah, right. There's no epidural on that. Cuts them out. So goes back. Yeah. Tribe goes back, man. They start burying it like rocks. They want to make sure this thing never comes back, right? So they bury it. And over time, it rained. Grass grew on it, man, and it like created this ridge that you can still see. So if we ever go on the road, dude, we got to go see this, man. We got to go to this county.
Subscribe now and turn on the notifications to join us on this extraordinary journey into the unknown.